Now, of course, a more serious story is this claim. The Green Party admits Polanski may have failed to pay council tax. But this story is far more complicated. The Green Party has admitted that its leader, Zack Polanski, has, until recently, been living on a houseboat in London and may have failed to pay council tax. In a statement given to the BBC, a party spokesperson said Polanski had taken steps to pay any tax he may be fined. Oh, they added, Zack apologises sincerely for the unintentional mistake. Polanski has been under pressure to explain whether the houseboat moored at a marina in East London had been his primary residence. A Waltham Forest Council spokesperson said it was assessing and taking legal advice over complex factors unique to moorings. So council tax and houseboats are extremely complicated, right? It's not like housing where paying council tax is obvious, right? A houseboat often moves. I think a lot of people have been saying, well, Zack Polanski called on Angela Rayner to resign over her not paying the correct council tax. The difference here, though, is like it's very obvious when it comes to housing. So obvious. But of course, you know, when it comes to houseboat, it's very different. Now, tax legal expert and Labour member, by the way, let's make sure to mention that there, Dan Neidle, went in on Zack on this story. So Neidle created a tweet thread of his investigation. Zack Polanski and his partner called their narrowboats their amazing home for 3 years. He registered to vote there. If it was his main residence, council tax was due. None was paid. His team says he stayed there only occasionally. If true, there's a very big problem. It's kind of obvious there will be council tax if you're living on a boat. That's the way the law works. So Dan Neidle seems to think it's a really obvious thing that you do that. But not only that, in a really odd move, Neidle even contacted a local laundrette. A local laundrette collected Mr. Polanski's laundry every 2 to 3 weeks, and local sources have told us that it was an amount of laundry suggesting regular occupation, not just occasional visits. Now, really a way to hold power to account by going to a laundrette, right, and finding out what's going on. And by the way, going to a laundrette every 2 to 3 weeks? I mean, people do their washing every other day, if not every day. To me, I don't know if I'm wrong. I've never lived on a houseboat, but that doesn't seem like a sign of regular occupation. Although Neidle said it was obvious that you have to pay council tax to houseboat, and despite doing a BBC interview talking about this, where the BBC didn't mention he was a Labour member, the next day he admits that basically his investigation falls apart. That's the way round I meant. My point is that both the councils and big organisations like Canal and River Trust and Lee Valley Regional Park are fully aware of this issue, but chose to ignore it as it suits everyone involved. Do you ask the Lee Valley Regional Park how many leisure moorings and how many residential moorings they have? My best guess is that they are making hundreds of thousands of pounds a year renting moorings as leisure when they know are being used residentially. For CRT, it's likely millions of pounds a year. That was from Paul Powsland. And Dan Neidle replies and says, I had no idea this was a thing before we started looking into it. But all the replies I'm getting from boaters make it pretty clear you're right. So before he did his deep dive, he didn't get all of his facts right. Okay. And even admitting there was an enforcement error, which all but one resident of a houseboat were not billed. Looks like there's been a significant enforcement failure. Lots of people living at that marina. Only one boat ever registered for council tax in 35 years. So Zack didn't know if he had to pay, which, by the way, he is now paid. Kevin, I feel like I know your response because you kind of mentioned it earlier, but was Zack right to apologise?
See, now you've said that, I want to be contrarian and say the exact opposite and say he should resign or something, just as a joke. Look, this is a nothing burger. This is an absolute nothing burger. The comparison between his call for the resignation of Angela Rayner, and he said Andrew Rayner, that's a different thing. Angela Rayner was that she at the time was the Deputy Prime Minister and with the dual brief of the Housing Minister. So she was the Housing Minister who didn't pay council tax when everyone else has to pay council tax on a static home, because that static home is made of bricks and doesn't move along water. So obviously the jurisdiction of the local council means you have to pay council tax in that particular jurisdiction, rather different than the moving boat principle. Anyway, this is a nothing story. I don't mind him apologising for this one as much, because this is a genuine oversight on his part. And like you say, it has been rectified. He has now paid the amount of council. Has he not paid it yet? Sorry, I was under the impression he had. But either way, he should pay the council tax that is due on that. And yeah, I don't mind him apologising so much because that is wrong. If you're due to pay council tax and you don't, that's wrong. That I think is undoubtedly the case. I didn't actually think necessarily that Angela Rayner necessarily had to resign either. Again, I think that was something of a ginned up classist thing, but and regionalist, of course. In the way that like Boris Johnson taking millions of pounds for wallpaper was fine, but not paying a few grand in tax was too much. It's the hypocrisy is glaring from the right wing. Yeah, Zach Polanski needs to ultimately though to stop apologising for things. Not because apologies are necessarily bad, but because there are some things for which one ought to apologise and some things which one ought not to. And secondly, to realise that the people seeking that apology do not care for the apology and will not accept it. We saw that with like Hypnoboob. He came out and said sorry, but the Labour Party right still attacked him for it and said your apology is insincere, or it's too late, or it's this, or it's that. They're not interested in the apology, so don't lower yourself to it. Don't accept their framing and narrative of the story in question. Stick to the line of we're taxing millionaires and billionaires, we're fighting on behalf of you. Talk past the bullshit to the country. Talk to the people about the things that matter to them. Don't talk to the media and the journalist class who only care about weird Westminster guff.